You know that saying, don't judge a book by its cover? Yeah, Karen should have followed that one. Because the woman she called the cops on for ignoring her authority just happened to be the new police chief. And the way karma came back around, let's just say the neighborhood hasn't stopped whispering since. Let me take you back to the beginning. My wife and I had just moved into a new house in a quiet, upper-middle-class neighborhood. After years of renting, we were finally homeowners. And not just any homeowners. My wife, a decorated law enforcement officer with 2 decades of service under her belt, had just been appointed as the new chief of police for our city. She wanted to keep things low-key, no public announcement, no spotlight, just us, settling in, minding our own business. But peace and privacy? That's not in the vocabulary of every neighborhood, especially not when you have someone like Karen patrolling the streets like she owns them. Karen was the self-appointed enforcer of the HOA, the kind of woman who carries a clipboard like a badge and treats minor issues, like weeds on your lawn or a trash bin left out an hour too long, like felony offenses. She had eyes on every driveway, ears on every conversation, and somehow always just happened to be walking her dog past your house when anything interesting was going on. So when we moved in and didn't immediately come groveling to her about HOA rules and community standards, she took offense. Big offense. She introduced herself to me while I was unloading furniture. "Hi, I'm Karen. I run the HOA here. Let me know if you have any questions about what is and isn't allowed around here." I gave her a polite smile and a simple, "Thanks. We'll reach out if we need anything." That should have been enough. But apparently, that response wasn't submissive enough for her liking. The next day, I caught her standing on the edge of our lawn, peering through our front windows. I stepped outside and asked, "Everything okay?" She pretended to be checking her phone. "Oh, just making sure your window treatments are within HOA guidelines. Curtains too dark can look unfriendly." Wait, curtains? That's when I realized we were dealing with a full-blown HOA tyrant. Still, we ignored her. We figured she'd lose interest and move on. But when my wife didn't answer the door during one of Karen's friendly visits, everything escalated. It was around 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday. I was at work. My wife, off-duty and home alone, was inside organizing our office. Karen came up and rang the doorbell. Twice. No answer. She knocked, louder this time. Still no answer. Why? Because my wife doesn't answer the door to random people during her downtime, especially not when she's wearing sweatpants and decompressing after a week full of city crime briefings. Instead of taking the hint, Karen decided not answering the door was some kind of HOA violation. So what did she do? She called the cops. Yes, you read that right. She actually called 911 and reported a suspicious resident refusing to respond to HOA outreach. She claimed that she was concerned the person inside wasn't allowed to be there. She even hinted it might be a break-in. Within 10 minutes, 2 patrol officers rolled up to the house, lights on but no sirens. Karen was standing in our driveway, arms folded, giving them a dramatic play-by-play. "She won't answer the door," she said. "I saw a woman inside, but she looked out of place. I don't think she lives here. This is a nice community." Let that sink in. My wife, a 20-year law enforcement veteran, in her own home, was being accused of being a suspicious trespasser by the same nosy woman who thinks curtain color is a community emergency. The officers approached the door and rang the bell. My wife answered this time, calm, collected, and probably 5 seconds away from laughing in their faces. One officer started to ask, "Ma'am, we got a call about," and that's when it clicked. The second officer looked at her and blinked. "Wait, Chief?" Karen's jaw dropped. My wife smiled. "Hey, Steve, didn't think I'd see you here so soon." Turns out, both responding officers were under her command. The younger one had just been promoted, and she'd signed the paperwork. The other had worked cases with her for years. Now the dynamic snapped. Karen stood frozen, trying to piece together what was happening. "Chief?" she echoed, confused. "She's who?" "She's our new boss," one of the officers said, turning to her. "This is Chief Daniels." Silence. Glorious, awkward silence. My wife looked Karen dead in the eyes and said, "I didn't answer the door because I don't owe you anything. Not an explanation, not a conversation, and definitely not access to my home." Karen tried to recover. I was just doing my duty. I didn't know who lived here. You have to admit, it looks suspicious. No, my wife said flatly. What's suspicious is a civilian patrolling private homes and calling 911 because someone didn't want to chat about HOA rules. Karen stammered, trying to backpedal. I was just trying to maintain standards. If you'd registered with the HOA properly, we could have avoided all this. The officer stepped in. That's enough, ma'am. False 911 calls are a serious offense, and you made this one under false pretenses. Karen immediately changed her tone. I didn't mean any harm. It's just that this is a very selective neighborhood. We like to know who's moving in. My wife's face stayed stone cold. Selective doesn't mean entitled, and just because you're uncomfortable with someone ignoring your knock doesn't give you the right to weaponize emergency services. And here's where it gets even better. Over the next week, my wife quietly began attending HOA meetings, not as a neighbor, but as an invited observer from the police department. She began reviewing 911 call data and noticed that Karen had made over 30 non-emergency calls in the past year, half of them regarding residents who looked suspicious or ignored her questions. It was clear this woman was using emergency services as her own personal HOA enforcement squad. After some quiet digging, my wife filed a report with City Council and the HOA board. The findings? Karen was abusing emergency services, intimidating neighbors, and misrepresenting her role. She wasn't even officially elected HOA president anymore. Her term had expired months ago, but no one else wanted to take over, so she just stayed in power. Well, that ended quickly. The HOA board voted unanimously to remove Karen from any leadership role. They issued a formal apology to us and sent a neighborhood-wide memo clarifying that no resident is obligated to engage with unsolicited HOA checks and that any abuse of 911 would result in legal consequences. Karen, predictably, was furious. She tried to play the victim, claiming she was just doing her part to protect the community. But by then, the neighborhood knew the truth. She wasn't a protector. She was a busybody with a God complex, exposed by the very authority she tried to manipulate. And as for my wife, she never once raised her voice. She never once pulled rank, but with calm, quiet professionalism, she took down a neighborhood tyrant without lifting a finger. To this day, I'll sometimes see Karen walking her dog past our house. Eyes averted, pace brisk. The clipboard? Gone. The smug smile? Gone. And the neighborhood? It's never been more peaceful.